The whispers followed Faith Palmer like shadows as she stepped into the church social, her black mourning dress a stark contrast to the colorful gowns that swirled around the parish hall. April 1877 had brought new life to Silvercreek, Colorado wildflowers dotting the hillsides and fresh paint on the storefronts. But for Faith, spring had only emphasized what she'd lost when influenza took her husband Thomas last winter. "There she is," Mrs. Abernathy muttered to Mrs. Green, not bothering to lower her voice. 6 months a widow and already out in society. Faith pretended not to hear, clutching her apple pie closer to her chest as she made her way to the dessert table. At 26, she was too young to resign herself to permanent widowhood, though the town seemed to expect exactly that. Thomas had been well liked, the town's only doctor, and folks seemed to think her attendance at social gatherings somehow dishonored his memory. "I brought pie," Faith said softly to Reverend Harris's wife, who managed a tight smile while taking the offering. "How thoughtful," Mrs. Harris replied, her eyes darting to the group of matrons watching from across the room. "Perhaps you'd like to help with the punch?" Before Faith could answer, a woman's voice carried across the hall. "I don't think that's appropriate, Betsy. What would people say if they knew a widow was serving refreshments? Might as well hang festive ribbons on a gravestone." Hot tears pricked Faith's eyes as laughter rippled through the crowd. 6 months of sideways glances and whispered judgments had worn her spirit thin, but this public humiliation threatened to break her completely. "Madam," a deep voice interjected, "I'd be honored to try a slice of your pie first, if you'd allow it." Faith turned to find herself looking up at a tall stranger. His weather-worn Stetson was held respectfully against his chest, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and the kindest blue eyes she'd ever seen. Unlike the other men in their Sunday best, he wore trail clothes clean but practical, with a hint of trail dust still clinging to his boots. "I don't believe we've met," Faith managed, grateful for the interruption, but wary of drawing more attention. "Cole Xavier, madam, just rode in yesterday." His smile transformed his tanned face, revealing a dimple in his right cheek. "And I have a mighty weakness for apple pie." Mrs. Harris, seemingly relieved by the diversion, quickly cut a slice and handed it to the stranger on a china plate, along with a fork. Faith watched as Cole took a bite, his eyes closing briefly in appreciation. "Madam, this might be the finest pie I've tasted since leaving Kentucky." A small, genuine smile tugged at Faith's lips for what felt like the first time in months. "Kentucky? That's a long way." "Yes, madam. Been working cattle drives since I was 18. I'm 30 now, and looking to put down roots." His eyes met hers with a directness that was both unsettling and thrilling. "Heard they need a foreman at the Double R Ranch outside town." The church hall had grown quieter, curious onlookers pretending not to eavesdrop on the exchange between the handsome newcomer and the young widow. "Indeed they do," Faith confirmed. "Mr. Richardson broke his leg last month, and his daughter can't manage the hands alone. Perhaps you might introduce me sometime. Being new in town, I'd appreciate a proper introduction." There was something in his gaze, a blend of respect and interest, that made Faith's cheeks warm. Before she could respond, Mrs. Abernathy approached, her face pinched with disapproval. "Mrs. Palmer is hardly the person to make introductions, Mr. Xavier. Her period of mourning isn't even complete. It's most improper for her to be conversing with unmarried gentlemen." Cole's expression didn't change, but something hardened in his eyes. He set down his empty plate and turned to face the group of women who had been gossiping earlier. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "Since I'm new to Silvercreek, perhaps you'll indulge me in a local, custom question." The room fell silent, all eyes on the tall stranger. "Where I come from? We believe a person's character is measured by how they treat those who are suffering. I'm curious, is it different here?" His tone remained pleasant, but there was steel beneath it. Mrs. Abernathy's face flushed crimson. "I don't know what you're implying, sir." "No implication, madam. Just an observation that Mrs. Palmer here has endured a great loss. Yet, instead of receiving comfort, she seems to be facing judgment for simply attending a church social." Cole turned back to Faith, his expression softening. "Which brings me to my second question." Faith's heart hammered in her chest as Cole took her hand gently in his. "Mrs. Palmer, Would you do me the honor of allowing me to escort you home this evening? And perhaps, he continued, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence, you might consider me a suitor in the days to come. I'd be proud to call a woman of such grace and strength my bride someday. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Faith stood frozen, caught between shock, embarrassment, and a flicker of something she hadn't felt in too long hope. Mr. Xavier, she finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper, we've only just met. Yes, madam, he agreed with that dimpled smile, but I recognize quality when I see it. In pie and in people. And I've found that the opinions that matter most come from those brave enough to express them openly, not whispered behind fans. Faith felt something crack inside her, the protective shell she'd built around her grief. Whether it was his kindness or her own desperate need to be seen as more than just a widow, she couldn't say, but she found herself nodding. I would appreciate the escort, Mr. Xavier. Thank you. Cole offered his arm, which she took with trembling fingers. As he led her toward the door, the crowd parted silently, faces showing everything from scandal to sympathy. At the threshold, Cole paused and turned back to the congregation. I look forward to getting to know you all better in the coming weeks. I've always believed that churches should be places of compassion rather than criticism. Good evening to you all. Outside in the April twilight, Faith finally released the breath she'd been holding. Mr. Xavier, you didn't have to do that. Cole, please. His expression grew serious. And yes, madam, I did. My mother raised me better than to stand by while someone's being treated unjustly. You've made enemies before you've even settled in town, Faith warned. Though she couldn't deny the warmth spreading through her chest, the first real warmth she'd felt since Thomas fell ill. Wouldn't be the first time, Cole replied with a shrug. Now, which way to your home? And do you mind if we walk slowly? I'd like to hear about this town, and about you if you're willing to share. As they made their way down Silvercreek's main street in the gathering dusk, Faith found herself talking more than she had in months about Thomas, about her life as a doctor's wife, and about the loneliness that had followed his passing. He was a good man, she concluded, as they approached her modest home at the edge of town. He deserved better than to die at 32 from a fever he caught treating others. Sounds like he was exactly the kind of man this town would honor, Cole observed, which makes their treatment of you all the more puzzling. Faith sighed, pausing at her gate. Thomas was from one of the founding families. I came from nowhere, a schoolteacher who caught his eye. Some thought I married above my station. When he died, she swallowed hard. Some think I should have moved away, let his family home go to his cousins. Cole's jaw tightened. And what do you think? This is my home, Faith said simply. Thomas wanted me to have it. He'd have wanted me to live, not just exist in perpetual mourning. I think you're right about that, Cole said softly. A good man wouldn't want the woman he loved to be trapped in grief forever. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment before Faith spoke again. Mr. Xavier Cole, your offer back there, was that just for show? To help me save face? In the lamplight spilling from her front window, Cole's expression was earnest. The timing was for show, Mrs. Palmer. The sentiment was genuine. He tipped his hat. I won't impose further tonight, but I meant what I said. I'd like to call on you properly if you'll permit it. Faith hesitated only briefly. Sunday after church would be acceptable. We can take tea on the porch. His smile returned, warming her more than it reasonably should. I'll be counting the hours, Mrs. Palmer. Faith, she corrected softly. If we're to be friends, you should call me Faith. Friends, Cole echoed, a question in his voice. For now, Faith replied, surprising herself with her boldness. Good night, Cole. Good night, Faith. Sleep well. As she watched him walk away, Faith felt something she hadn't experienced since before Thomas fell ill, a flutter of anticipation for tomorrow. 3 days later, Faith was hanging laundry in her backyard when she heard the distinctive sound of hoofbeats approaching. She turned to see Cole Xavier riding toward her home on a handsome chestnut gelding. Good morning, Faith, he called, dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. Hope I'm not intruding. Not at all, Faith replied, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened at the sight of him. She'd spent too many nights thinking about his unexpected defense of her at the church social. I'm just surprised to see you before Sunday. Cole removed his hat, revealing hair still damp from recent washing. I came bearing news and a question. His expression was bright with excitement. I got the foreman position at the Double R. Miss Richardson hired me on the spot yesterday. Congratulations, Faith said sincerely, setting down her laundry basket. That's wonderful news. It comes with a cabin on the property, good pay, and the chance to buy in as a partner after a year if things work out. Cole stepped closer, his expression growing more serious. Which brings me to my question. Would you consider riding out to the ranch with me today? Miss Richardson is hosting a small dinner to introduce me to the hands, and she specifically asked me to invite you. Faith's hands stilled on the damp sheet she'd been about to hang. Rebecca Richardson invited me? She did. Said she's been meaning to call on you for months, but wasn't sure you were receiving visitors. Cole's eyes held hers. I might have mentioned that you make the best apple pie in 3 territories. A laugh escaped Faith, a genuine, unrestrained sound that surprised her as much as it seemed to please Cole. Did you now? And what if my baking skills don't live up to your boasting? Then I'll eat 2 pieces to make up for the disappointment, he replied with that dimpled grin. What do you say? The fresh air would do you good, and it would give the town something new to gossip about. Faith glanced at her half-hung laundry, then back at Cole. 6 months of isolation stretched behind her, of declining invitations and keeping to herself. Perhaps it was time to rejoin the world. I'll need an hour to finish here and change, she decided. And I should bake something to bring. I'll stable my horse and come back to escort you, Cole offered. That should give you plenty of time. True to his word, Cole returned exactly an hour later to find Faith waiting on her porch in a blue dress that Thomas had always said matched her eyes. She'd packed a fresh baked berry cobbler, still warm from the oven. You look lovely, Cole said simply, offering his arm. The ride to the Double R took them through meadows bursting with spring wildflowers. Cole had borrowed a wagon and team from the ranch, making the journey comfortable. As they traveled, he told her about his years on the cattle drives, about growing up in Kentucky, and about losing his parents to a riverboat accident when he was 22. That's why I understand something of what you're going through, he explained as they crested a hill overlooking the sprawling Double R. Grief changes you, makes some days feel impossible to get through. Yes, Faith agreed softly, though I'm starting to have more good days than bad ones. That's how healing works, Cole nodded. Not all at once, but little by little. Until you realize you've gone a whole day without that ache in your chest. The main house of the Double R came into view, a handsome 2-story structure with wide porches and tall windows. Several ranch hands were already gathered in the yard, and a striking woman with auburn hair stood waiting on the steps. There's Miss Richardson, Cole said, guiding the wagon toward the hitching post. Don't let her intimidate you. She's sharper than most men in business, but she's fair-minded. Rebecca Richardson proved to be exactly as Cole described, direct, intelligent, and unexpectedly warm. She greeted Faith with genuine pleasure. Mrs. Palmer, I'm delighted you could join us. Your husband treated my father's gout for years with more patience than the old goat deserved. She clasped Faith's hands. I should have called on you after his passing. Please forgive my negligence. There's nothing to forgive, Faith assured her, surprised by the woman's candor. And please, call me Faith. Only if you'll call me Rebecca. She turned to include Cole in the conversation. I see our new foreman has excellent taste in friends as well as horses. Come inside, both of you. The men can wait a few minutes while we have a private word. Inside the well-appointed parlor, Rebecca poured 3 glasses of sherry before settling across from them. I'll be direct, Faith. This town has treated you shamefully since Dr. Palmer's death. Faith nearly choked on her sherry. No, please, Rebecca held up a hand. Let me finish. My father raised me to speak plainly. The way certain people, especially those sanctimonious church ladies, have behaved is disgraceful. Thomas Palmer saved half their lives at one point or another. Cole sat quietly, his expression suggesting he was seeing yet another side to his new employer. Why are you telling me this? Faith asked. Because I want you to know that not everyone shares their narrow views. Rebecca leaned forward. And because I could use your help. My help? Indeed, I'm turning part of the ranch into a breeding operation for quarter horses, and I need someone with a good head for numbers to help with the record keeping. Your late husband mentioned once that you kept all his medical accounts in perfect order. Faith blinked in surprise. Yes, but it would be 2 days a week, well paid, and you'd be doing me an enormous favor. Rebecca's expression softened. And frankly, it would give those busybodies something legitimate to gossip about instead of inventing slights against propriety. Cole cleared his throat. Miss Richardson, if I might, Mr. Xavier, I'm offering Mrs. Palmer a position based on her qualifications, not as a favor to you, Rebecca cut in with a knowing smile. Though I admit your obvious admiration for her character did bring her to mind when I was considering who to approach. Faith felt warmth creep into her cheeks. I'm not sure what to say. Say yes, Rebecca urged. Start next week. The fresh air and change of scenery will do you good. And, she added with a mischievous glint, it will absolutely infuriate Mrs. Abernathy, which I consider a delightful bonus. For the first time in months, Faith felt a spark of purpose ignite within her. Yes, she decided. I'd be pleased to accept. Excellent, Rebecca stood. Now, let's join the men before they drink all the good whiskey. I want to introduce you both properly. The dinner that followed was the most enjoyable social experience Faith had had since Thomas's death. The ranch hands were respectful, the food was excellent, and Cole's steady presence beside her gave her a confidence she'd nearly forgotten she possessed. As they rode back to town in the gathering dusk, Faith found herself reluctant for the day to end. Thank you for bringing me, she said, watching the sunset paint the western sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I haven't enjoyed myself so much in a very long time. The pleasure was mine, Cole replied, though I have a confession to make. Oh? I may have mentioned to Miss Richardson that you were good with numbers, but she came up with the job offer entirely on her own. He glanced at her, his expression earnest in the fading light. I wouldn't presume to arrange your affairs. Faith appreciated his honesty. I believe you. Rebecca doesn't strike me as someone who can be easily influenced. Not at all, Cole agreed with a chuckle. She interviewed me for nearly 3 hours before offering me the foreman position. Asked about everything from my experience with cattle breeding to my views on how to handle troublesome ranch hands. And what did you tell her about troublesome hands? That respect works better than fear, but clear boundaries are essential. Cole's hands were steady on the reins as they crossed the small bridge leading back to town. Same is true for most relationships, I reckon. Faith considered his words. Is that why you stood up for me at the church social, setting boundaries? Partly, Cole admitted, but mostly because I couldn't stand seeing someone being treated unjustly. My father always said character is revealed in how we respond when no one's watching, or when everyone is. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic clop of hooves and creak of wagon wheels the only sounds. As the first stars appeared, Faith found herself studying Cole's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the kindness in his eyes, the way he carried himself with quiet confidence. Cole, she said finally, I've been meaning to ask. That proposal at the church social, was it just for show, to put the gossips in their place? He slowed the wagon, turning to meet her gaze directly. The timing was for show. The intent was real. His voice grew softer. I know it's too soon. I know we've only just met. But sometimes, Faith, you just know when something feels right. The earnestness in his voice made her heart flutter. Most would say it's inappropriate. I'm still in mourning. Most people haven't lived enough to understand that life doesn't always follow proper schedules. Cole's gaze held hers. I'm not asking for promises, just permission to call on you properly. To see where this might lead. Faith thought of Thomas, his kindness, his love for her, and how he'd always encouraged her to live fully. Thomas once told me that if anything happened to him, he wouldn't want me to be alone. Her voice caught. He said life was too precious to waste on empty traditions. He sounds like a wise man. He was. Faith took a deep breath. Yes, Cole, you may call on me properly. But, she added with newfound boldness, let's agree to take our time, to become friends first. Cole's smile in the starlight made her breath catch. Friends first, he agreed, reaching over to gently take her hand. Though I must warn you, Faith Palmer, I intend to court you properly once an appropriate time has passed. I'll consider myself warned, she replied, returning his smile as they continued toward town under a canopy of stars. The following weeks established a new rhythm to Faith's life. Twice a week, she rode out to the Double R Ranch to work on the breeding records with Rebecca, developing a genuine friendship with the capable ranch owner. On Sundays, Cole would escort her to church, his tall presence beside her gradually silencing the worst of the gossips. After services, they would take tea on her porch, sometimes joined by Rebecca or other new friends, but often enjoying each other's company alone. Word spread through Silvercreek that the young widow had found employment and a potential suitor. Some approved, others didn't, but Faith discovered that with Cole's steady support and her growing circle of true friends, the opinions of people like Mrs. Abernathy mattered less and less. By June, wildflowers carpeted the meadows around Silvercreek, and Faith's grief, while still present, had softened into something she could carry without being crushed by its weight. She kept Thomas's photograph on her mantle and spoke of him often with Cole, who listened with genuine interest and respect for the man who had been her first love. One warm evening, as they walked along the creek that gave the town its name, Cole asked about Thomas's family. "They live in Denver now," Faith explained, watching a pair of deer drink from the creek. "His parents never approved of me, the poor school teacher who caught their son's eye. After he died, they wanted me to sell the house and move away." She sighed. "When I refused, they left. We haven't spoken since the funeral." Cole's expression darkened. "That explains some of the town's attitude. If the Palmer family rejected you, it gave others permission to do the same," Faith finished. "Though not everyone. Dr. Miller, who took over Thomas's practice, and his wife have been kind. And, of course, Rebecca. And me," Cole added with a gentle smile, "though I can't claim much influence in town yet." "You have more than you know," Faith told him. "Rebecca says the Hands respect you tremendously, and Mrs. Miller mentioned that several families have commented on how well you've settled in." They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a bend in the creek where a large oak provided shade. Cole guided Faith to a smooth boulder where they could sit and watch the water flow by. "Faith," he began, his normally confident voice hesitant, "there's something I need to tell you." A flutter of anxiety passed through her. "What is it?" "Before I came to Silvercreek, I was engaged." His eyes met hers, serious and sad. "Her name was Ellen. We grew up together in Kentucky." Faith's heart constricted. "What happened?" "Influenza, same as your Thomas." Cole looked down at his hands. "It was 3 years ago. We were to be married that spring." Understanding washed over Faith. "That's why you were so kind to me from the beginning." "You understood." "Yes." Cole's gaze returned to hers. "But that's not why I'm telling you now. I'm telling you because what I feel for you is real, Faith. It's not born from shared grief or pity or loneliness. And I needed you to know about Ellen before." He trailed off. "Before what?" Faith prompted softly. Cole took her hand in his. "Before I ask if you might be ready to consider a future together. Not immediately," he hastened to add, "but someday, when you're ready." Faith's heart raced. In the 2 months since they'd met, Cole had become her closest friend, her strongest supporter, and increasingly, the person she most wanted to share her thoughts with. The attraction between them had grown from a spark to a steady flame, though both had been careful to maintain propriety. "Cole," she began carefully, "I care for you deeply, more than I thought possible after losing Thomas. But you need more time," he finished for her, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "I understand. I'll wait as long as you need." "No," Faith surprised herself with her answer. "That's not what I was going to say. I was going to ask if you're certain. I'm still finding my way back to myself. Some days are still hard." Cole's expression softened. "Faith, I don't want some perfect, untroubled version of you. I want you with all your memories, your grief, your strength, your kindness, the hard days and the good ones." Tears welled in Faith's eyes. "I'm beginning to love you, Cole Xavier. It terrifies me sometimes." "Because you love Thomas." "Yes, and because losing him nearly broke me." Cole gently brushed a tear from her cheek. "Loving someone is always a risk, but a life without love." He shook his head. That's no life at all. Faith leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. Then yes, I'm ready to consider a future together, not rushing, but not holding back out of fear either. Cole pressed a gentle kiss to her hair. That's all I ask. As summer deepened, so did Faith and Cole's relationship. They were careful to maintain propriety. Faith was still technically in her mourning period, and small-town eyes were watching, but their growing attachment was evident to anyone who saw them together. Rebecca became their staunchest ally, often inviting them both to the ranch for dinner, or organizing small gatherings that gave them time together in respectable settings. Under her influence, many of Silvercreek's more progressive residents began to accept the relationship. Though the church matrons continued to sniff disapprovingly whenever Faith and Cole entered services together. One August afternoon, as Faith was finishing her work at the ranch, Rebecca entered the small office with an envelope in hand. "This came for you," she said, passing it to Faith. Ryder from town brought it out. Faith recognized the Denver law firm's letterhead immediately and felt her stomach tighten. She opened it with trembling fingers. "What is it?" Rebecca asked, seeing her expression change. "It's from Thomas's family," Faith explained, scanning the formal legal language. "They're contesting his will." "They want the house." Rebecca's eyebrows shot up. "On what grounds? You were legally married." "They claim he wasn't of sound mind when he made his final will." Faith's voice shook with anger. "He left everything to me explicitly because he knew they'd try something like this. They never thought I was good enough for him." "This is outrageous," Rebecca declared. "Do you have a lawyer?" Faith shook her head. "I can't afford one. Not a good one anyway." "Nonsense. My father's lawyer in Denver is excellent. I'll telegraph him today." Rebecca's tone brooked no argument. "The Palmers may have money, but they don't have right on their side. I can't accept that kind of help, Rebecca. You can, and you will." Rebecca crossed her arms. "Consider it an advance on your salary if your pride demands it. But I won't stand by while some entitled family tries to take your home because they think their blood is somehow better than yours." Cole found them still discussing the situation when he came in from the pastures. His face darkened as Faith explained the letter. "This isn't right," he said, jaw tight with anger. "They ignored you for months, and now they want to take your home?" "They never wanted me to have it," Faith explained wearily. "Thomas knew that. It's why he had a special will drawn up when he realized how ill he was." Cole paced the small office. "There has to be something we can do." "Rebecca's already offered her father's lawyer," Faith told him. "But honestly, I don't know if it will be enough. The Palmers have connections in Denver." Cole stopped pacing, his expression shifting from anger to determination. "Faith, I have a suggestion. It's unorthodox, but it might solve this problem." Both women looked at him expectantly. "Marry me," he said simply. "Now, this week." Faith stared at him, stunned. "Cole, hear me out," he continued, kneeling beside her chair. "If you're remarried, the claim that you're somehow taking advantage of the Palmer family loses all merit. The house would become our marital property, protected under different laws." Rebecca nodded slowly. "He's right, Faith. It would complicate their legal claims significantly. But marriage..." Faith's mind was reeling. "Cole, we agreed to take our time. And I'd wait years if that's what you needed," he assured her, taking her hands in his. "But this isn't just about us anymore. It's about protecting what's rightfully yours." His blue eyes held hers intently. "I love you, Faith. I was going to ask you properly at Christmas, with a ring and everything fitting. But sometimes life doesn't wait for perfect moments." Faith's heart pounded. She cared deeply for Cole, was falling in love with him more each day, but marriage was a monumental step. "Could we truly build a marriage on such a foundation?" she asked quietly. "Beginning it as a legal strategy rather than a natural progression of our relationship?" Cole's expression softened. "The timing would be strategic, yes, but my love for you is real. My desire to build a life with you is real." He squeezed her hands gently. "I'm not asking you to forget Thomas or to rush your heart. I'm asking you to let me protect you while your heart takes all the time it needs." Rebecca cleared her throat. "I'll step outside to give you privacy." But Faith Cole's right. This would be the most effective way to counter the Palmers' claim. When they were alone, Faith searched Cole's face. "You're certain about this?" It's a lifetime commitment, not just a legal maneuver. I've been certain since the moment I saw you standing alone at that church social, Cole told her, his voice rough with emotion. I know it's fast. I know some will talk. But I love you, Faith Palmer. I want to build a life with you, to wake up beside you each morning, to face whatever comes our way together. Tears filled Faith's eyes, but they weren't tears of sadness or fear. For the first time since Thomas's death, she felt completely certain about her path forward. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Cole Xavier, I will marry you. His face broke into that dimpled smile she'd grown to love. Truly? Truly. Faith reached out to touch his cheek. I love you too. It came so unexpectedly, but it's real and true and deep. Cole pulled her into a gentle embrace, his lips finding hers in a first kiss that held both tenderness and promise. When they parted, both were smiling through tears. I don't have a ring yet, Cole apologized. We'll find one together, Faith assured him. What matters is that we're facing everything together. Rebecca, summoned back by their laughter, was delighted by the news. We'll hold the ceremony here at the ranch, she declared. Small but proper. Sunday afternoon, after church. That gives us 4 days to prepare. Sunday? Faith's eyes widened. So soon? The Palmers' lawyer indicated they're filing their claim next week, Rebecca reminded her. We need to establish your new legal status before then. Cole squeezed Faith's hand. Is Sunday too soon? We can try to delay their claim instead, if you need more time. Faith took a deep breath, thinking of Thomas, of the home they'd shared, and of the future she now envisioned with Cole. No, Sunday is perfect, she smiled up at him. I don't need a grand ceremony, I just need you. The next 4 days passed in a whirlwind of preparations. Rebecca threw herself into organizing the small wedding with characteristic efficiency, sending riders to Denver for fabric for a new dress for Faith, and arranging for the circuit judge to perform the ceremony since Reverend Harris had made his disapproval of the hasty union quite clear. On Friday, Cole took Faith to select a simple gold band from the town jeweler, who looked scandalized by their plans, but took Cole's money readily enough. Are you certain about this? Faith asked as they walked back to her house, the small ring box secure in Cole's pocket. The whole town is talking. Let them talk, Cole replied, his arm protective around her shoulders. In a year, they'll have forgotten how quickly we married. All that will matter is that we're happy together. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful. Rebecca had transformed the ranch's garden into a simple but elegant setting with wildflowers in mason jars and chairs arranged for the small group of guests, primarily ranch hands, and the few townspeople who had shown consistent kindness to Faith. Faith wore a dress of pale blue silk that Rebecca had helped design, with her hair arranged in a simple updo adorned with baby's breath. As she prepared in Rebecca's room, her friend handed her a small package. This came by special messenger this morning, Rebecca explained, from Denver. Inside, Faith found a delicate pearl necklace and a note in unfamiliar handwriting. Dear Faith, Thomas spoke of you with such love that I felt I knew you, though we never met. I was his nurse during his medical training. He saved these pearls from his grandmother for his bride, but his parents kept them when they disowned him for choosing you over the match they wanted. I liberated them before leaving their employ. They rightfully belong to you. Thomas would be happier finding love again. He valued happiness above all else. With warm regards, Martha Jenkins. Tears filled Faith's eyes as Rebecca helped her fasten the pearls around her neck. It feels like his blessing, she whispered. Because it is, Rebecca assured her. Now, are you ready? There's a good man waiting for you. The ceremony was simple, but deeply meaningful. Cole, handsome in a new black suit, watched Faith approach with such love in his eyes that she felt any lingering doubts dissolve. Judge Wilson kept the service brief, speaking of commitment, partnership, and building a future together. When Cole slid the gold band onto Faith's finger, his hands were steady, his voice clear as he recited his vows. I, Cole Xavier, take you, Faith Palmer, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love, honor, and cherish you in sickness and in health, in good times and bad, for as long as we both shall live. Faith's voice trembled slightly as she repeated her own vows, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought her to this moment from deepest grief to unexpected joy. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Judge Wilson declared. "You may kiss your bride." Cole's kiss was gentle but held a promise of deeper passion to come. When they turned to face their small gathering of well-wishers, Faith was surprised to see several townsfolk who hadn't been invited standing at the edge of the garden, including Dr. and Mrs. Miller, who were beaming with approval. The celebration that followed was joyful but modest, a meal shared at long tables in the ranch yard, music from a fiddle played by one of the hands, and dancing as the summer sun began to set. As twilight deepened, Cole led Faith to a waiting buggy decorated with wildflowers. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Xavier?" he asked softly. The name sent a thrill through her. "Yes," she replied. "Though I'm not sure which home you mean." Cole smiled. "Rebecca insisted we use her family's cabin by the lake for a few days, for privacy." His cheeks colored slightly. "After that, we can decide together your house in town or my cabin here on the ranch, whatever you prefer." As they rode away amid cheers and well wishes, Faith leaned against her new husband's shoulder. "I never expected to find love again," she confessed. "After Thomas died, I thought that part of my life was over." Cole's arm tightened around her. "Life has a way of surprising us. When I rode into Silvercreek, I was just looking for work, not a wife. And instead, you found a widow being mocked at a church social," Faith said with a small laugh. "I found the woman I want to spend my life with," Cole corrected, his voice tender in the gathering darkness. "And I'll spend every day making sure you never regret taking a chance on me." The cabin by the lake was charming, a single room with a stone fireplace, comfortable bed, and wide porch overlooking the water. Cole had arranged for it to be stocked with food and necessities, allowing them complete privacy for their first days as husband and wife. That night, as moonlight spilled through the windows, Faith and Cole discovered each other fully for the first time. Their lovemaking was tender, passionate, and marked by the deep emotional connection that had grown between them over the summer months. Afterward, lying in Cole's arms, Faith felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a very long time. "I love you," she whispered against his chest. "And I love you," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Get some sleep, Mrs. Xavier. We have our whole lives ahead of us." 5 days later, they returned to Silvercreek to face whatever awaited them. As their buggy approached Faith's house, their house now, they were surprised to see Dr. Miller waiting on the porch. "Cole, Faith," he greeted them warmly. "Welcome home. I have news you'll want to hear right away." Inside, over tea, the doctor explained that a telegram had arrived from Denver the previous day. "The Palmers have withdrawn their claim on the house," he announced. "Apparently your marriage and some new evidence regarding Thomas's mental competence convinced their lawyers they couldn't win." "New evidence?" Faith questioned. "A sworn statement from Thomas's former nurse," Dr. Miller elaborated. "A woman named Martha Jenkins. She testified that Thomas was completely lucid when he changed his will, and that he explicitly stated his desire for you to retain the property regardless of whether you remarried." Faith exchanged a knowing glance with Cole. "Martha's letter arrived just before the wedding. She sent Thomas's grandmother's pearls." Dr. Miller smiled. "Well, between your marriage and her testimony, the Palmers' case fell apart. Their lawyer sent formal notice that they're abandoning the claim and will not contest the will further." Cole took Faith's hand, squeezing it gently. "That's wonderful news." "Indeed," Dr. Miller agreed, rising to leave. "Oh, and you should know opinion in town has been shifting. Mrs. Abernathy and her cronies tried to organize some sort of protest about your hasty marriage. But Rebecca Richardson shut that down rather spectacularly at the Mercantile yesterday." His eyes twinkled. "I believe her exact words were, 'If you have time to meddle in the affairs of a loving couple, you have time to help with the orphanage fundraiser I'm organizing. I'll expect all of you ladies at the planning meeting tomorrow.'" After the doctor left, Faith and Cole stood in the parlor of the house that was now legally and indisputably theirs. "So," Faith said, looking around at the familiar space, "this is truly our home now." "If you want it to be," Cole replied. "We could also take my cabin at the ranch, or build something new. Whatever would make you happiest." Faith considered this as she walked through the rooms that held so many memories of her life with Thomas. For months after his death, those memories had been painful. Now, she found she could appreciate them without being overwhelmed by grief. "I think," she said slowly, "that I'd like to stay here for now. This house has known love before. It should know love again." She turned to face Cole. "But I'd like to make some changes. Make it ours, not just mine or Thomas's." Cole crossed to her, taking her in his arms. "I'd like that. We'll honor the past while building our future." He kissed her softly. "Together." "Together," Faith agreed, leaning into his embrace. Over the following months, Faith and Cole settled into married life with a joy that surprised them both. They made changes to the house, new curtains, rearranged furniture, a workshop for Cole in the back, where Thomas's medical garden had once been. Each change honored the home's history while creating space for new memories. Faith continued working at the Double R twice a week, her friendship with Rebecca deepening into a sisterly bond. Cole thrived as foreman, earning the respect of the hands and the trust of neighboring ranchers. By Christmas, Rebecca had made good on her promise to offer him a small partnership stake in the breeding operation he'd helped establish. The town's attitude had indeed shifted, partly due to Rebecca's influence, partly to the obvious happiness of the couple, and partly because new gossip eventually replaced the old. When Faith and Cole attended the Christmas Eve service at the church, even Mrs. Abernathy managed a stiff nod of acknowledgement. After the service, as they walked home through gently falling snow, Cole suddenly stopped and pulled Faith into a sheltered doorway of the mercantile. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small package from his coat pocket. "I wanted to give it to you privately before we exchange our other gifts at home." Faith unwrapped it carefully to find a delicate gold locket. Inside was a tiny portrait of Thomas on one side, and on the other, a small photograph of Cole. "Oh, Cole," she breathed, tears filling her eyes. "I know he'll always have a place in your heart," Cole said gently, "as Ellen will in mine. I thought you might like a way to keep that memory close while we build our new life together." Faith threw her arms around him, overcome with emotion. "It's perfect. You're perfect." "How did I get so fortunate to find you?" "I'm the fortunate one," Cole insisted, holding her close. "Every day with you is a gift I never expected." Faith pulled back slightly to look up at him, snowflakes catching in her eyelashes. "I have a gift for you too," she said softly. "One I was saving for tomorrow, but now seems right." "Oh?" Faith took his hand and gently placed it against her stomach. "We're going to have a baby, Cole, in summer." Cole's expression transformed from confusion to wonder to pure joy. "A baby? Truly?" Faith nodded, laughing as he lifted her off her feet and spun her in the snowy street. "Careful! We don't want to start rumors about the foreman dancing with his wife in public." "Let them talk," Cole declared, setting her down but keeping her close in his arms. "Let the whole town see how much I love my wife and our child." As they continued home through the snowy night, Faith reflected on the incredible journey of the past year, from the depths of grief and loneliness to the heights of love and hope. What had begun with humiliation at a church social had transformed into a life fuller and richer than she could have imagined. By the following Christmas, little Thomas Cole Xavier had joined their family, bringing new joy and countless sleepless nights. Faith discovered that motherhood suited her perfectly, especially with Cole's unwavering support and partnership. The baby's birth further cemented their place in the community. Even the most critical gossips couldn't resist the charm of the blue-eyed infant who had his father's dimple and his mother's gentle temperament. Rebecca, named godmother at the christening, doted on the child and had already begun planning his future role at the ranch. "He'll need to learn the business from the ground up," she insisted, though Thomas was still months from his first steps. On their first wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Faith with a picnic by the creek, where he had first told her about Ellen and asked her to consider a future together. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Xavier," he said, pouring her a glass of wine as they watched little Thomas sleep peacefully on a blanket beside them. "Happy anniversary, Mr. Xavier," Faith replied, leaning against his shoulder. "It's been quite a year." "The best of my life," Cole agreed, his arm encircling her waist. Though I expect the years to come will be even better. Faith turned to face him, reaching up to trace the beloved lines of his face. When I lost Thomas, I thought my chance at happiness had ended. I never imagined I could love again, have a family again, and I never thought I'd find someone who understood both my grief and my hope, Cole said softly. You healed parts of me I didn't know were broken, Faith. As you did for me. Faith kissed him tenderly. Thomas once told me that love was the greatest healer. I didn't fully understand what he meant until I found you. As they gathered up their sleeping son and headed home in the golden light of late afternoon, Faith reflected on the strange and wonderful path that had led her here. From widow to wife, from grief to joy, from isolation to belonging, her journey had come full circle. That evening, as Cole rocked Thomas to sleep, singing a soft Kentucky lullaby, Faith stood in the doorway watching them, her heart so full it seemed impossible it had once been shattered. The home that had known such sorrow now overflowed with love. And when the church social came around again the following spring, Faith entered with her head high, her husband beside her, and their son in her arms. Mrs. Abernathy herself approached, admiring the baby and commenting on how well marriage suited Faith. You know, the older woman confided, I always told my husband that Dr. Palmer would have wanted you to find happiness again. So proper of you to wait an appropriate time before remarrying. Faith exchanged an amused glance with Cole, who squeezed her hand in silent understanding. Some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when you'd already won the war. Thank you, Mrs. Abernathy, Faith replied graciously. Life has a way of working out exactly as it should, doesn't it? As they moved through the church hall, greeting friends and neighbors, Faith felt none of the anxiety or shame that had marked her appearance the previous year. In its place was a quiet confidence and a deep contentment. Cole leaned down to whisper in her ear, Happy, Mrs. Xavier? Faith smiled up at him, this man who had defended her honor before he even knew her, who had loved her through grief and joy, who had given her a new beginning when she thought her story was ending. Completely, she replied, meaning it with every fiber of her being. Completely happy,